You're listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. Now, the largest new media platform on the web and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good game, Johnson.
From the AfterBuzz Studios in Los Angeles, California, and streaming live on Ustream, this is AfterBuzz TV for The Secret Circle. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest Secret Circle news and gossip. If you'd like to buzz in on tonight's show, you can buzz us at 424-256-1729. That's 424-256-1729. And now, picking up where the show leaves off and the buzz continues, it's AfterBuzz TV for The Secret Circle.
Good evening, After Buzzers. Welcome to your Season 1, Episode 5 after show about The Secret Circle. We are going to dish everything from news and gossip to what happened on tonight's episode. I am your host, David Scifalidi, and I am joined by my lovely co-host from week to week, Billy Nellis.
Hello, hello.
Good evening. And we have a newcomer to us here at The Secret Circle, Heather Borsa. How's it going? Did I say that right? Basra.
You'll get it.
I'll get it eventually.
It's all good.
I promise.
It's like basura, but without the U.
Okay. I'll never remember that.
Okay.
No, I'm
We'll
just
figure
kidding.
it out.
I'll
We'll
get it.
figure
I'll
it
get it. I'll get it eventually. It's fine. And don't forget, later on tonight, we are going to be doing our very special segment for you where we discuss our favorite witch movies. And it's kind of one of my favorites. I'm not going to lie tonight.
Yeah.
But let's jump right in. There's a lot to discuss. A lot happened tonight. And I feel like we should start off with Adam and Diana, our favorite witch couple.
Are they?
No.
Not so much, but you know, they are an integral part of the circle. Diana's sort of like the leader of the group. Adam sort of is her henchman in a way. And we found out tonight that they were the first two to figure out that they were witches.
Right. And I liked finding that out tonight.
I
thought
did
that
too.
was an interesting piece of trivia. And that until they found their book, they didn't even really know to look for anybody else. Or until they found
Exactly.
Diana's book. I thought that was some good backstory. That wasn't like, it was just thrown out there. It wasn't made like
That's
a big
why
deal.
they're so close.
Right. They were boyfriend and girlfriend first, and then they were witches. It's very nice. That's why I like them. I do enjoy them as a couple. I do like the tension between Cassie, Adam, and Diana, even though we didn't see any of that tonight.
Right.
But it's good. I think, you know, we got to see a little bit of the other side of the spectrum when it comes to Adam and Diana, where we got to see them being a couple
Right.
as opposed to being witches and always trying to figure things out in this whole new witch world with the circle and everything. And we got to see them just having fun for a chance.
And I think that it was important because it let us understand how they are as a couple. Because I don't think that up until now we had gotten to see that.
Right.
So I think that now we can understand the stakes into what Diana's fighting for. Because now
Exactly.
we've been let in on how close they are and how they can be when they're together and how he really does have feelings for her, regardless of whether Cassie's around or not.
Exactly.
So I think that was important for us at this point to see that, because up until now it was kind of like, what stakes are there in Cassie breaking this up, because we hadn't seen any of that.
I was totally on Cassie's side up until.
Right?
Oh, were you?
I totally was. I was like, oh, dude, fight for it. Because his dad was always saying, you know, I should have been with her mom. The stars are aligned and blah, 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 blah. So I was like, okay, maybe they are meant to be together in their little witch world.
Right.
I mean, maybe they are meant to be together, but right now it is nice to see that despite the fact that everything's pulling Adam to Cassie, he still really does love Diana.
Right. I think that makes there more tension, because now we understand what he's being pulled away from.
Right.
Whereas before we didn't. So I think that was necessary.
It was a nice little thing that the writers gave us, a nice little nugget
Yes.
of information.
And I think that with how heavy tonight's episode was, that also sort of alleviated some of that. The scene at dinner with them
Yeah.
was probably the only respite we got from how intense everything else was. And it allowed for us to have a little sexy time.
Yeah,
a little
and
fun.
you know, it's the first time on this season since the series started that we've seen a different couple get a little hot and heavy besides Nick and Melissa.
Right.
And so we got a little different sexy times,
Yeah.
a little more interesting
it's more
sexy times.
And it was cute, and it was like it was
Yeah.
fun with the whipped cream, and
It was.
I had
She
visions. I
attempted
had
to cook
visions of
dinner.
like Varsity Blue.
I
when she
know,
was
right?
Standing there with the whipped cream, I was like, is she gonna like make a bikini? and lift it up?
I mean, it's very stereotypical with the whole whipped cream and like she cooked dinner.
But it was cute.
But you know, it's cute. That's what teenagers do
Yeah.
when they're dating,
Right.
right? In quotation marks.
Right.
Yeah.
So we won't call what they really are doing dating, but you know, it is what it is.
Right.
Was there anything else that Adam and Diana were doing in this episode? Really, not much. They were just being in love and being part of the circle.
I think the only other thing was towards the end, once all the intense events had transpired, when they were closing up the bar, and Diana said, I don't know what I would do if I lose you, and Adam said to her, I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
And actually, Diana made him promise that. So I think that that's maybe going to come back to haunt Adam further down the road when we do see that this cosmic connection to Cassie starts to pull him
Right.
away.
I think we're going to be seeing that sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we will get to that in news and gossip. I hope. I think I included that in the news and gossip, but
Yeah, I think so.
we will get there later tonight.
Yeah.
So moving on,
Yes.
Cassie at the beginning of the episode is sort of keeping secrets. Grandma finally returns. Since episode 1, we haven't seen her.
Yeah.
She's been missing in action, apparently.
Working shifts at the hospital. I
She's a
think was
nurse,
the
I guess. I
excuse.
mean, she's worked to the bone,
Mhm.
clearly. But she's finally around during the day. And Cassie seems uneasy about keeping secrets from her. Grandma just wants to know how she's doing. And Cassie has to sort of give her the third degree because she's been told by Diana, she's been told by the circle that they need to keep this a secret. No one's allowed to know until they realize exactly what's going on. And we see her go to school and tell Diana that, you know, I spoke to my grandma. She told me that she would help me if there was ever a problem. And I feel like we should tell somebody else. And Diana shuts her down immediately,
Right.
of course.
Right.
She loses control.
Right. Diana loses control.
Right.
That's
I
a
think
very
that
good
goes
point.
back to what we talked about. I think it was last week when we talked about it, just how Diana seems to be like the leader of this group, and everyone does have to go to her for permission
Right.
for things. And I think she's afraid that if an adult, somebody who an older generation knows that they have power, she won't be able to control this circle anymore, because somebody who understands what they're doing will eventually take over.
Right. And we do see Diana telling Cassie that at the end of her book, at the last few pages, is a spell about talking about
The elders.
the elders and how the parents were punished for their actions and how they were stripped of their powers. And that's the last thing that any of them want. They don't want their powers to be stripped. They just discovered them, for goodness sake. Like, the last thing they want, they just found their circle, like, is to lose it all.
Right.
It's all so new to them and they're still figuring it out. And we did see last week when Cassie didn't heed Diana's advice, where things went out of control and she made the wrong decisions. So I guess Diana, to a certain extent, does have
A point.
a point and some of the answers.
Right.
But later on in the episode, Cassie goes to Grandma.
Cassie's forced to. I mean, they really
Yeah,
Cassie's
pretty
forced to go to
much.
Grandma.
have no other option.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, I mean, good thing that she thought about
doing that.
even
Yeah.
including her.
Right.
It seems like their parents 16 years ago, when they were faced with a similar situation, decided to take things into their own hands. And we do see Charles and Dawn doing that again,
Right.
as opposed to asking for help, like Cassie was smart enough to do. They took things into their own hands and possibly did something that they might not be able to come back from, speaking of Dawn and Charles.
Yeah. Well, and I think that I think it just shows the difference between, I guess, this generation circle with their previous where I think that we're seeing shades that Dawn and Charles and the other parents were really power hungry, whereas these kids are intrigued by it and excited, but I don't think they have the same intentions, where they are kind of willing to get help when they need it. And in the end, things aren't as disastrous. I mean, it still was pretty disastrous.
It still was, yeah.
Someone was killed.
Yeah.
Someone was killed. Where were you when the circle was broken?
This was a game changer. I wrote that. I wrote game changer.
It was definitely a game changer. And I don't know if you remember, but earlier on in the season, when the series first started, they did talk about how the parents' circle was never bound. They were together as a group, but they never bound their circle, which is why their power was so erratic.
Right.
And possibly a reason Grandma does explain that the elders, from what we are coming to believe are the grandparents of the children, didn't want their children to know about magic, and they tried to keep it from them. And things got out of control then, and that's why it's being kept from the kids again.
Right.
Where are you guys on that?
I kind of feel like when Cassie's grandma, whose name I wish I could remember, but I don't
think they ever
name, just grandma.
Grandma.
When she, was kind of talking about how she doesn't want any more secrets and she wants Cassie to be able to talk to her, the impression that I got was that grandma understands that these kids are in the magic now, and I think that she regrets keeping the kids, trying to keep her kids out of magic, because by doing that they didn't understand it and so many bad things happen. And I think now grandma is kind of realizing that it's inevitable that they're going to understand it, and she'd rather them come to her so maybe she can teach them and avoid these things, because I think she probably feels guilt from keeping their children, the middle generation, out of it, because it led to them just doing things without any knowledge.
And without any control.
Right.
And to such detriment to their own generation. I mean, each child in this circle has lost a parent, and in Nick's case, lost both parents.
Right. So the elders lost children.
Right.
Because of their mistake, essentially.
Right.
It kind of reminds me of like Spring Awakening, with like just the way that the parents, I guess it just goes back to any sort of thing where you keep kids away from something they're eventually going to get into anyway. Like, it's that debate of whether you should, at a younger age, explain certain adult things to your kids so that they have the foundation to do it wisely, because they're going to get into it anyway. So why not arm them with the knowledge to do it properly and to do it with care and concern.
And hope that everything turns out okay.
Right. Rather than pretend it doesn't exist and leave them with no capability to handle anything when they do eventually come across it. And then we see things like the boathouse accident.
Exactly. There was something else that Grandma said that we're reminded of again this week, that with witchcraft comes evil. And we're reminded that one more time.
Right.
And I don't necessarily think that she's only talking about demons.
No.
Oh, no.
There has to be something else that they're talking about. Like, either it's someone who is power hungry, which we see Dawn and Charles.
Right. And that's the kind of the impression that I got, was that beyond just the demons that, like we learned last week, where there are witches, there are demons. That's just they're always in a struggle together. But what I kind of took from it was, with witchcraft, it has the power to corrupt.
Right.
And it does always. And I think her main goal at this point is to protect these kids from being corrupted the way the middle generation was.
Right. And like we've spoken before, witchcraft itself is not good or bad intrinsically.
It's how the witch uses it.
The person.
Right.
It's just very interesting to me that the older generation loves to talk about how evil's going to come to you no matter what you do. They're constantly reminding them. Even in their books, they know evil's coming, beware of it.
Right. And I do think that, and this is probably more for predictions, but I do think there is some other larger force that's coming.
I think so.
Yeah.
I do think so. Yeah. I think that's in news and gossip as well. But steam heading from that, Dawn and Charles this episode were very shady.
Yes.
And have been so ever since the series started. But we see them tonight. They're waiting for the blood moon, which we find out they've been waiting for a year
Right.
to reappear, I'm assuming.
I guess it's only once a year.
Yeah.
don't really know
I mean,
much
I
about
wouldn't assume that, like, it's only happened once in 16 years, but if they had known about it within the past 16 years, why had they waited so long?
Right.
Yeah.
But essentially what I got from that is that they had their crystal, the one crystal with the magic in it, and they were trying to harness the power of all the crystals to regain their full power.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were trying to locate the other crystals.
Yeah.
You
Because
think?
I did write down Dawn, after they realized that their crystal was dead, it had been used too often, Dawn said they needed 5 more for their power to be restored.
Right.
They were, because it was on top of a compass.
Of a weird map
It was on
thingy.
top of, it was just like a compass point. It was like
Yeah.
north-south. And I think that it's not that they had to wait 16 years for the blood moon. I think that they were waiting for a blood moon once the circle was bound.
That makes more
because
sense.
the circle had to be bound to give them their power back.
Right. Right.
So
right.
they need one crystal per each member of the circle,
Correct.
and they needed the blood moon to locate the crystals.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot more
But
sense
they've
than
used
what
their
I'm thinking.
crystal way too much.
Yeah.
Well, they've drained their crystal. We've seen them already at least once an episode
Use
They're
it.
fighting
using
over
it. And they're fighting over it. There's a struggle between the two of them. I mean, who has it? Who gets to use it? I mean, the first spell that we saw, which opened the series, I'm sure drained the
Yes.
crystal immensely.
Yeah.
I mean, who's to say? I mean, they brought someone back from the dead. They killed somebody with it. They tried to drown somebody with it.
And they, with Faye's grandpa, they used the crystal on him.
Yeah, they killed him.
Dawn used the crystal
Yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
him too. So yeah, it's been used many times just since in the 5 episodes.
Right. I mean, how much?
And they've obviously been using it prior to that as well.
Exactly.
Because that's the only source of power they had.
Exactly. And then we see Dawn and Charles having to make a really gut-wrenching decision of whether or not to save Nick or kill the demon.
Right.
Now, at this point, when Nick came to the boathouse to talk to Dawn, I don't know how you guys felt, but I felt that Dawn wasn't as bad as she's been seeming to us. And I also felt that when Charles was faced with the decision of having to kill Nick, that he also it wasn't
Yeah.
as bad as we're thinking he
Right.
is.
I think that we saw that in both of them, that it really, I guess, humanized them.
Yeah.
Kind of made them less of just the stock villain of the episode. But I think that you saw that they really had no choice, because as we saw with Heather, the only way to save Nick and not kill the demon would for it to either possess somebody else or to put him in that catatonic state.
Right. And we found out from Grandma the only way to kill a demon is to set it on fire
or to drown
it.
Yep.
So at the same time, it's the lesser of two evils. As we see Dawn talking about later, we might have killed Nick, but we've saved so many other people.
Right.
But at the same time, they need the circle to get their magic back.
Right. And they've just
broken the circle.
Yeah.
But let's get into the possession. We start out the episode with Melissa, which we saw last week, the demon entering her ear. She wakes up in the morning. She says she has a headache and is basically freaking out from the first half of the episode. She goes to school. She's like, has a headache. She's like rushing around, like doesn't know what she's doing, bumps into Mrs. Chamberlain.
Freaks out there.
Freaks out on her and is like, watch where you're going.
Yeah.
And just is not having a fun time. And then all of a sudden it clicks in her at some point. I don't know how or why, but the demon sort of just fits in better with her and has full control of her as opposed to her body trying to fight it.
Right.
And the demon has a plan to, I guess, release more demons.
Larger demons.
Larger
The snakes are
demons.
So much bigger.
As opposed to the teeny tiny garden snake. Or worm.
It's like a worm.
That has entered Melissa. And tells Nick that she has found her book of shadows, from reading her mother's diary and that they need to get it. They go to the woods, they get this suitcase out, and then everything starts to come into play.
Right. Yeah.
What were you guys thinking at that point?
I didn't know how Melissa was going to get out of it. I didn't know how we were going to save Melissa.
Right. I mean, in all the
So at that
promos,
point-
we did see
Right.
where will you be when the circle is broken. At this point, I thought
We were losing
we were
Melissa
losing
tonight.
Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it was really kind of fun to see the girl play possessed. Like I enjoyed that, the way that her voice would get so crazy. And
It was pretty awesome
It was
how.
good to see her evil.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was
Usually her best
fantastic.
friend, Faye's the evil one, and she's the little follower, the good girl, and now we get to see her be
more than just a bitch, though. She was like
was just evil.
awful,
Right.
awful girl.
right. Yeah, and I didn't know how what was going to happen. I didn't really see Cassie going to grandma coming.
Neither did I.
In the very beginning, I didn't know that I didn't think that would be an option for us.
But it was very
I totally
smart.
saw it.
Did you really?
I did. I could tell.
It was smart of the writers, though, and the producers to plant that seed at in the first 2 minutes of the episode that Grandma tells Cassie that she can always come to her
Yeah.
if she needs
Mhm.
help, so that when she is faced with the issue and the problem of needing
it wouldn't
help,
feel so weird. For
it
her
wouldn't
to
feel
run
so
to her.
strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I kind of loved seeing Grandma get badass
Oh, it was
I did.
fantastic.
and come in with that. Obviously, more powerful than anybody else in the game right now. Like
Right.
Oh yeah.
she locked that thing with her eyes. She moved the scissors with it. Like
Mhm.
I was excited
It was
about
like no
that.
spell necessary.
But if you did notice, when Grandma was called into play, she came in and the demon told her that she isn't powerful enough.
Right.
Yeah.
But she said, I have the power of my children. And she had a crystal.
Mm.
That's probably where they're holding it
Yes.
It's all right there.
It's probably her power and
and all of that.
all of the children's power. I mean, each elder has had a crystal with
Mhm.
them, which probably correlates to
Their child.
their family lineage.
Right.
Mm.
Which if
Interesting.
Don and Charles were smart enough would figure that out.
Yeah. Too bad.
Too bad. But it was awesome seeing Grandma come in, stepping up, saving the day, and sort of taking control. And I think it's fantastic to see like an older person come into play with their circle, because it's going to be someone that can teach them how to use their magic, how to control their magic, teach them new spells, and just be sort of a guide and a teacher for them,
Right.
which I think they're so desperately craving at this point.
Mhm.
Right. And clearly they need, even if they aren't craving it, we know they need it.
They need it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I would say Diana wants a teacher. As much as she
Yes.
doesn't want to tell anyone, she definitely wants someone to help her out with her magic.
I think
and
she's
help her
carrying a
control
burden
it.
that
I think-
also that I don't think she wants.
I think she's scared because she's been reading her book and reading her her mom's diary, and maybe seeing that their magic was stripped away, and she doesn't want that. So maybe she's just scared to talk. And now this is a way for her to actually be able to talk to somebody without feeling fear.
Right.
Yeah. It's very
And
true.
what I also loved in that scene, once we realized that the demon had left Melissa and we didn't know where it had gone,
Mm-hmm.
that was so.
I thought it was the grandma.
I did too. No, I did too. I was like, now that if we just saw Grandma be awesome and now she's gonna have the demon. I kind of thought that. Then it clicked in my head that obviously it was Nick because he was like right down.
Yeah, he
at
was
her.
right
Yeah,
next
he
to
was
her.
talking to her.
But that scene was so. It was so the faculty. Do you remember the faculty
Oh
and when
my
they're in
God,
the garage
yes.
and they all have to snort the
The pixie stick.
it was like the drugs, it was like the ADD drugs.
Yes.
That would like that made the aliens go nuts, and that just so reminded me of that, like the tension of like who is it in, who's like playing normal.
So true. I forgot about
that
that,
was
movie.
so the faculty.
That is so true. I love it. And they were also very snaky.
Yeah,
And
there's those like aliens that just slither up
Yes.
your nose.
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Secret Circle. Where were we? The possession. All right. So the demon jumped from Melissa to Nick. Nick bolts as soon as he's discovered. And at this point, it's just clear. I mean, I thought at some point they were going to be able to save Nick because they all went after him. And Nick is saying, he calls Adam and is like, bring the suitcase with you or I'm torching the boathouse.
Right.
He meets with Dawn, Nick does, in the boathouse and says that he wants to finish what they started. He says that he wants the circle just as bad as they do. He's like, I want everything that you want.
Right. And he even says that Dawn helped summon him.
Right.
Yeah.
So clearly Dawn wrought this amongst everybody else.
Well, I think that generation's circle was all included in summoning him. We sort of missed his name because they said it very strangely. Started with a B.
Albad?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I could never understand it.
I could
when
never
said
understand it. They said it twice. None of us caught it. So sorry about that. But Dawn very cleverly finds a way to get Nick to follow her and calls Charles at the same time. And that's when they make the decision to drown Nick. The only way to save Nick is to kill the demon, but the only way to kill the demon is to kill Nick.
Right.
And I guess they weren't expecting to be caught by Cassie and her grandmother. So they drown him.
They bolted.
Right.
And just left him for dead. And I guess the police came and called it an accident. And Nick is dead.
Yeah.
And the circle is broken.
Right.
But their secret's out.
Yes. Well, to Grandma at least.
To Grandma at least.
Right. Did either of you have at least a second of fear that the demon had jumped to Dawn?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was really scared.
I thought it had as well.
At the end, we were going to see like something in her head.
Yeah.
And then we were going to think that Nick was dead for nothing.
Yeah.
I'm so glad they didn't go there because that would have been so heavy.
Yeah.
Like for him to die.
It would have been too much.
No reason.
Yeah.
But I was really scared because Kevin Williamson, you never know. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, it's gonna be in Dawn.
Well, she's like, just do it. It's not him.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my God.
But you also never know with Kevin Williamson. He's done it with Vampire Diaries where he's killed off characters and brought them back later on.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe Nick's coming back. Maybe he's not. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I mean, it's kind of sad because we were kind of getting to a point where we saw Nick as more than just a jerk.
We did. We were
Yeah.
coming to this point where he was like a human and he had
Right.
feelings and we were starting to love these characters.
And I guess while it's sad, I guess that was necessary for us to feel the loss of him.
Right.
Because if he had remained just that jerk, we really, as an audience, wouldn't have cared so much when he died because like, oh, well, he was just like the jerk.
Yeah.
But we saw him come to really, I would say, love Melissa. Like he fought for her this episode.
Some point,
Pride.
at some
I would say there's something
extent, yeah.
there. And he, he was the only one who was falling for when the demon was in her.
Right.
And so it was needed. It was definitely necessary, or else his death wouldn't have had the emotional punch that it did
Yeah.
at only episode 5.
Right.
Had that not happened. But it does suck because
It
like
does
we just
suck.
invested into this guy and we started to like him, and now
We've
gone.
lost him.
we've lost him.
Where is the circle going?
Yeah, where do we go from here?
Where
How
do we go from here? I think from here, we go to a commercial break.
All right.
Want to find out what the AfterBuzz is about?
Janice is a drama queen.
This is the divide that is going to carry the series.
Give us a call. 424-256-1729. 424-256-1729.
It's television, and they want it to be as dramatic as possible.
I mean, it's Shakespearean.
You never know what goes on behind closed doors.
Find out why AfterBuzz TV is the #1 source for after-show content.
Now, in the eyes of Jimmy, Nucky is a villain.
424-256-1729. 424-256-1729.
I mean, who would you guys rather hear that from? Your husband or your best friend?
The wig! The wig will come out.
When the TV show is over, get your AfterBuzz on.
Welcome back,
Welcome.
everybody. We're going to go right into our special segment. It's raining here in the AfterBuzz TV studios.
Oh.
Just in case you were wondering.
Maybe it's a spell.
It's definitely a spell.
Where's Faye? Starting
Right?
his stories again.
Oh my gosh.
But we teased you many weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I think, with our favorite witch movies. Last week we talked about The Craft.
Yes.
This week we are talking practical magic.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite movies, and it deals with a lot of the issues that they dealt with in this episode of Secret Circle. It's a movie from 1998 based on the novel by Alice Hoffman, directed by Griffin Dunn, and the screenplay by Robin Swycord, starring Sandra Bullock, Nicole Kidman, Stockard Channing, Diane Wiest, Evan Rachel Wood, and Camila Bell as children.
Yeah.
So, very female-centered film.
Yes.
But a lot about family,
lineage
of generations of power. And in practical magic, within the generations of power and the lineage of magic and the women that have to deal with a familial curse, in quotation marks, there is a possession as well. And is also shown as an amphibian.
Is it?
As
I
a
haven't seen the
toad.
movie in so long.
Oh my
I apologize.
god. They kill Nicole Kidman's boyfriend by accident or whatever, and they get attacked by the toads, and when he disappears, it's a whole bunch of toads and then dust. So sort of the same idea that serpentines.
Right. There's always, because the evil's always represented as like a cold-blooded animal.
Right.
It's never in a warm-blooded because it's so close to the mammal that I think in the history of literature, when we speak about evil, we always put it in that sort of animal because it's so different from our species.
Right.
And I think it goes back to the Garden of Eden, where the snake was really the tree of knowledge, and it brought sin upon the world.
Look at you, bringing it full circle.
Yeah.
What I love about this movie, though, more so than the fact that Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman are full goddess, in full goddess mode in this movie, with the crazy of Stockard Channing, I think it's the bonds that these women have with each other. We see the two older women who are sisters, and then Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman's bond, and the two daughters who are Camila Bell and Evan Rachel Wood, their bond, and how they can speak with each other without even having to speak. And I think that's more the type of world that magic lives in.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where Secret Circle is definitely going when their circle is no longer broken.
Yeah. When they find a way to rebind it.
Yeah.
What I think is also
recreate.
interesting is with movies like Practical Magic and a lot of movies dealing with witches or stories with witches in history, it's always sort of been a female-centric thing. The witches, the witchcraft is always in the female species. But I think what's interesting, what we're seeing now in present day, I mean, with The Secret Circle and also with Vampire Diaries, is we're seeing a lot of men come into play in witchcraft. And I find that interesting to also watch that it's not just like the cursed woman with her witchy powers, but now it's sort of a universal thing. It's making the women witches, I think, more equal.
We saw that in Charmed. There were warlocks.
There were warlocks, but the warlocks on Charmed were evil.
Yeah.
They were.
They were not good, ever.
No.
There was never a good witch.
No.
Male witch.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
But we did see them.
We did see them. They were there.
Yeah.
We
But I think
stand
there's been like
corrected.
a nice progression though.
Yeah.
So I do like
think
to
so.
see it being like on both sides.
Yeah.
Because I felt like before it was sort of a connotation where it was like using it as bitch. Like women were relegated to the witch.
Right.
Where now it's not so much the case any longer.
That's true. And you do, in history with the whole Salem witch trials, you never heard or never read about a man being.
Of course
Right.
not. Well,
It's true.
'cause back in the day, women
It's true.
were
Women were not as equal. Yeah. And on that note, if you haven't seen Practical Magic, go out, rent it. It's amazing.
If even just for the lime and the coconut.
Oh my God.
That
Or
scene.
for, I think it's Nicole Kidman singing Drink a Cup of You.
Probably.
Yeah, it is when she's driving all alone.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, there are
It's a
some
fun movie.
fantastic
It's cute.
gems in that film.
It's a little lighter than Secret Circle. So
It's a
fun.
lot lighter
Yeah.
with some darker moments, but
Yes.
you know, it is family friendly, and it is the month of October.
A good Halloween movie.
It's a great
It
Puts
is
you
a
in the
good
mood.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. And on that note, let's move on to our Secret Circle news and gossip.
AfterBuzz TV News.
All right, so party time. Break out the boxed wine and whatever teen witches drink. Potion, orange soda.
Strawberry
Yes,
Fanta.
Heart of Dixie and Secret Circle have both been picked up by the CW for full seasons. Hot on the heels of Ringers, good news as well. Heart of Dixie has consistently built on its leading Gossip Girl, while Secret Circle is the network's top-rated new show.
Ooh.
And incidentally, the second highest-rated show on the network at the moment. This means, of course, that all the CW scripted fare have been picked up for full seasons. Hater, its only new fall reality show, was also its only casualty, as it was canceled last week and replaced in the schedule by Ringer repeats.
R.I.P.
Oh God.
Wow.
We believe in the creative strength of these dramas, and by giving them back 9 orders, we can give our audience a chance to enjoy complete seasons of all 3 of them, says network president Mark Pedowitz. With compelling storylines, engaging characters, and tremendous buzz, we firmly believe that Heart of Dixie, Ringer, and The Secret Circle can become signature series for the CW, the kind of top-notch shows that are synonymous with our brand.
Yay.
Whoop, whoop. Full season, y'all.
Yep.
Good news.
Love square alert. If you thought the love triangle between Diana, Cassie, and Adam was oozing with sexual tension, hold on to your pointy hats, because you ain't seen nothing
I
yet.
think this is a spoiler.
In The Secret Circle, this night's episode,
Wasn't this night's episode?
I think that's next week.
next week's episode, Faye and Cassie go head-to-head when Faye's ex-boy toy Jake comes back to town to get in on a little witch action. Turns out that even witches with a capital B have feelings, because Faye's black heart was broken in pieces by Jake, and now she's seeking revenge. Psh, who cares about Faye's sinister plan? Jake only has eyes for one lady, and her name rhymes with sassy.
Amazing.
While Jake is busy making eyes at Chance Harbor's newest bombshell, Adam is dismayed by the fact that another guy is vying for Cassie's attention. So expect him to run off into a field of light bulbs and explode them with the power of his inks or something. Just a prediction.
Wow.
Wowsies.
All right, so next we have Entertainment Weekly sat down with our dear friend Gail Harold, and I think we're going to let you guys read 2 of each. from the
Okay.
interview.
Yeah. So we had some questions here for EW had some questions for Gail Harold. They started with Charles told his daughter Diana that he was dating Dawn to explain why they were spending so much time together. Charles seemed more okay with that lie than Dawn did when he told her about it. Should we read into that, or will it be addressed again? Gail answered, I don't know. The way we played that scene to me, it's sort of like Charles is just trying to cover his tracks. And the thing that made the most sense was to use that as the reason. There's something going on between the 2 of them. He was kind of caught. Diana called him out. I think in his mind there's wishful thinking. That's one of the things I really like, him having to react on the spot and just make it up as he goes along. It's one of those moments where your excuse makes it worse. Now Diana has all these expectations. EW followed up. Charles has said he hasn't been in a relationship since Dawn's mother, I think that should be Diana's mother, died 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Is that the truth? We've seen the kids getting some action on the show. Will Charles? Gail replied, well, you get that idea based on the one conversation you see Charles and Diana have had about this. But who knows? His daughter has to go to sleep and then get up and go to school during the day. Just like you don't know what your kids are doing, you don't know what your parents are doing. Who knows what's going on? I think he's lonely, and I think it's difficult for him because as Diana gets older, she really reminds him of the fact that his wife is gone. That's a really painful echo.
Interesting. EW then asked Gail, "It's interesting to hear you talk about Charles's vulnerability. I hadn't really thought of him that way." And Gail responded, "Stay tuned. It's coming. I'll put it in this way, and I say this with great respect for parents because I haven't had that responsibility. If you have children and you destroy someone's parent and leave their child vulnerable and alone, there's no way that that doesn't have a very intense and painful effect on you. Charles can't look at his own daughter without being quite aware that there's another daughter just across town who has lost her mother, and it's because I set her house on fire and burned it down." Vulnerability is built in. There's one way to play the character where it just doesn't bother him, but that doesn't interest me at all. Then he's just a robot.
Yep.
EW followed up, "What I took away from last week's episode is that whenever witches bind the circle, the power draws some kind of evil to them. If demons come and are those demons the evil or the minions of a bigger bad? Is there anything you can tease about that?" And Gail answered, "I think it's a good question. It's what I was trying to get at before. Once you open the door, what's behind it? And how does what is behind it either come out or suck you through? There's the traditional idea of good witches and bad witches. But on the other hand, if you stir up the pot and you don't know what you're going to release, the question you asked is interesting, and are those just minions or are those competing powers? It is some sort of ongoing power struggle. Now that one side is awake, the other side has to wake up and keep them under control."
Okay. It says, it is interesting. Both Charles and Diana have reasons to want to keep their knowledge of what is going... Wait, I think maybe that's supposed to be Dawn.
No, I think that is Diana.
I think that is Diana.
Let's keep it a secret from one another.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. But at some point, if you know your daughter is in danger, you should want to step in if you don't actually want her to die. That's one aspect that's very interesting to me. There is a different trap there. It's kind of difficult for him to make a move in any direction because 99% of the results are bad, dangerous, and or equal or just...
Disgusting.
Really? That's disgusting? Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say distinguished, but that didn't make sense. I'm really tired. Like, straight up. I'm really tired. Can't even read this paper.
I'll read your last one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What's the deal with that crystal that Dawn and Charles have? It sounds like it only has so much power and they have to ration it. Well, it seems to me just a part of the dynamic of the circle. It's like an amulet. They're animated by nearness to others like them. That's one of the interesting things about the story. You have all this inherent power, potential power, but doesn't work unless people are in the same place at the same time and communicate with each other. Really good interview.
Yeah.
There's a lot more up there. If you want to read any more, you can find it online. It's out there.
w.com.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Warning, a spoiler has been found on AfterBuzz TV property. Please remain calm. Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
So long.
All right, so the Grim Reaper is coming. The Secret Circle's pack of teenage witches better bust out their crystal rocks because the Grim Reaper is coming to Chance Harbor. The verdict's still out on what this cloaked weirdo and his giant Sith are doing in town, but there's no way he'd claim the lives of our nearest and dearest, right? Before you start panicking and about the possibility of Adam biting the fairy dust, remember that there's been buzz about a Secret Circle Halloween episode. Maybe Faye's just embracing her killer ways with an ironic Halloween costume?
Do you think that was just an allusion to tonight, perhaps?
Perhaps, but it goes on.
All right, Britt Robertson spills Halloween witching hour. We can't wait to be scared silly during the Secret Circle's Halloween episode, but Britt Robertson says to expect a few laughs alongside plenty of frights. When you have witches in Halloween, it can be fun to make fun of certain things. Britt tells TV Line, "What I love about what Kevin and Andrew did is they weren't trying to ignore the fact that we're witches on Halloween. We play with a lot of different funny things. Hopefully this means someone will wander around Chance Harbor with a Team Slytherin shirt. But as we all know, All Hallows Eve isn't just tricks, treats, and dressing up in ironic costumes. One of our directors, Liz, who is a big part of our show, is saying, The great thing about Halloween is that scary things can happen in the middle of the night, and there's people roaming the streets. You can scream, but nobody really takes notice to it. So that's the kind of fun element we get to play with a lot. Does that mean a demon inchworm try to steal the circle's candy?
Totally.
Yes.
Completely. And let's move right into predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV
Predictions.
So scary.
So scary and really creepy. So Nick is dead.
Nick is dead.
We do know that there are going to be stop it, Jesse. 2 new characters being introduced sooner rather than later. Jake, whom I'm assuming that we're meeting next week, which is Faye's ex-boyfriend,
Right.
who could possibly be a replacement for Nick
Yes.
in the circle, and Melissa's cousin, who could also be a replacement for Nick in the circle.
Right.
So I think that's going to be coming up. But we saw in the preview that someone is out to get them again.
Again. So soon.
So soon. Well, they have an opportunity now. The
Right.
circle's broken. They don't have magic.
Well, I wonder if they have it, but it's not as powerful as it was when the circle was bound. Because I can't imagine that it took everyone's power away, but I think that just the binding of the power and the sort of like the power up that they got when they bound it is probably gone. But I can't imagine that the others have lost their power.
Well, we're going to have to wait and see how they explain it.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like in episode 3, when they were being chased by that guy, he said all he has to do is kill one of them and the circle is broken and they have no magic.
Right.
So we'll have to see how they explain it.
And that guy could also not really have known fully.
I
what
mean,
was talking
he
about, so-
wasn't really part of the world, so.
Right. He just presumed, I think.
Yeah.
But so I think that will definitely be interesting.
That's definitely going to be interesting.
Yeah. What I think will be interesting to see is how the guilt of what happened tonight really is going to play on everybody.
Yeah.
I think we saw shades of it at the end in that final montage. I think it's really going to weigh on Charles because Charles was pretty gutted about the fact that he had to kill a kid.
Well, this is the second person he's killed.
Right. And it seems like we're realizing that he really doesn't want to be a killer. I think we're
No.
getting to that point that even that obviously tonight he had to, and before he might not have had to when he killed Cassie's mom. I think that was more something that was out of greed than anything else.
Right, and I think that was part of a bigger plan, and I still think
that might eventually
in the root of it all, I don't think that Charles and Dawn have bad intentions. I think they're just having to do all these awful things as a means to an end.
Right.
But why would they summon the demon in the first place?
That's interesting.
That's
If their
what's the
intentions are
interesting thing is we found
Well-
out tonight that not even Grandma knows what happened 16 years ago at the
Yeah.
boathouse.
Right, and I think that plays more on the secrecy thing where grandma is wanting to avoid this new generation from hiding it
Right.
because it probably all could have been avoided.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that the summoning of the demon was probably an accident.
Yes, I
and
do too.
not what was intended 16 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think that it was these kids not understanding the full intensity of what they were doing.
Right.
Is what led to these demons being awoken.
Yeah, and I think next week it's going to be a different type of demon.
Yeah.
But a demon nonetheless.
Right.
Yeah.
What I also think, I mean, if we look at it this way, all of what has happened in the last 2 episodes is also kind of Cassie's fault.
Right.
Because if Cassie had listened to Diana, she wouldn't have woken Heather up.
Right.
And this whole demon business wouldn't have been started,
Right.
leading to Nick's death. So I'm wondering if we're going to see Cassie sort of realize that this is kind of, in a roundabout way, a chain of events that she started.
Or if we're going to see people blaming her.
Yes. Right.
And
Right.
she's going to be segregated.
Yeah. I mean, I could see Melissa blaming her.
I could see Faye blaming her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Melissa was possessed.
Right.
And now
Well, yeah.
lost the person who she clearly loved. I
Right.
think she did love
She
Nick.
did have very strong feelings for
And
him.
I mean, in that montage when it was clearly Faye telling her that Nick died, that was like, so.
I mean,
really
the most
sad to
emotion that
watch.
we saw
Yeah.
from anyone after
Right.
finding out that Nick was dead. I mean, she's the only one who seemed to have really been affected by it.
Yeah.
Let's not lie.
Yeah.
I mean, Diana
Cassie had her one tear.
Cassie had one tear. Diana didn't even have tears.
Yeah.
Adam was just like, yeah.
Right. Everyone's too cool.
Everyone was very stoic about it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do think that that we are going to see some in everybody guilt
Yeah.
sort of be an inner evil.
Yeah, I think so. And I think next week is going to be a very solemn episode where the characters are sort of on their own.
And kind of away from each other because it's still so fresh that they don't want to really be around each other because being around each other is a reminder of what just happened.
Right.
Yeah.
So I do think they'll be apart. And I think that's what's going to open them up to danger with this person coming after them, whoever it is,
Yeah.
because they're not going to want to be around each other. And that's going to make them susceptible to being
Evil.
right. Exactly.
All right.
But I
Sounds
mean,
good to
it was a
me.
game changer this week.
It was definitely a game changer. Things
Yeah.
are changing
Yeah,
in Chance Harbor.
they are. Can't wait to see what happens next.
Well, thank you guys for joining me tonight. Thank you all our listeners. Thank you here everyone at AfterBuzz, from DJ Jesse Janity, myself, Billy, and Heather. Have a wonderful night.
Good night.
From producers Kevin Undergaro and Phil Svitek, engineer DJ Jesse Janity, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. If you have questions or comments, be sure to buzz us at info@AfterBuzzTV.com. And you can find us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.